My name is Evelyn Carter, and I never imagined the happiest day of my granddaughter Sophie. Wedding would become the day I finally realized I meant nothing to my own son. I had spent months planning every detail, using more than $100,000 from the savings my late husband and I built together. I paid for the elegant venue, the decorations, the gourmet catering, the invitations, and even the beautiful wedding dress Sophie had always dreamed about. I believed I was giving my family a memory they would cherish forever. Wearing my favorite pink silk dress and my mother's pearl necklace, I arrived at the venue with a heart full of pride, excited to watch my granddaughter begin a new chapter of her life. The celebration looked magical, with flowers everywhere, sparkling lights, and hundreds of smiling guests. As I walked toward the entrance, my son Daniel stopped me with an expression colder than I had ever seen. He glanced at the guest list before saying that my name was not on it. At first I laughed, convinced it had to be some terrible misunderstanding. Then I noticed my daughter-in-law, Lauren, standing beside him with a smug smile, while nearly 200 guests stared at me in complete silence. The humiliation cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. I quietly turned around, thanked them for clearing up their mistake, and walked away with my dignity still intact, even though my heart had been shattered. Back home, I looked at a picture of my late husband and realized I had spent years confusing generosity with love. Daniel and Lauren had never treated me like family. To them, I was simply the person who solved every financial problem. Instead of crying, I opened the files containing every contract and receipt from the wedding. Every payment had come from my account, and every agreement carried my signature. I immediately called my longtime attorney, Michael Bennett, and explained everything. By the end of the conversation, we both understood something important. They had publicly embarrassed the very woman who owned almost everything they depended on. While Daniel and Lauren enjoyed their honeymoon in Paris, I quietly took back control of my life. The apartment they lived in belonged to me. The beach house they proudly called theirs was also mine. Even the luxury car Daniel drove every day remained registered in my name. I canceled the $4,000 monthly allowance I had been sending them for years, changed the locks on the beach house, prepared an eviction notice for the apartment, and demanded the return of my vehicle. Every decision followed the law. But this time, I refused to let kindness be mistaken for weakness. The moment they returned from Europe, reality hit them hard. They found an eviction notice waiting on their apartment door. Their access to the beach house had been revoked, their bank cards stopped working, and they were no longer allowed to drive the luxury car. Daniel called me in a rage, accusing me of destroying the family, but I calmly reminded him that he had thrown his own mother out of the wedding she had paid for. Lauren begged and blamed everyone else, insisting it had all been a misunderstanding. But I refused to believe another lie. For the first time in years, they discovered what life looked like without my financial support. Eventually, they confronted me outside my building, hoping guilt would change my mind. Instead, I reminded them who I really was. After my husband passed away, I had successfully managed and expanded our transportation company before selling it for a fortune while keeping several profitable commercial properties that still generated a large monthly income. The wedding money they considered a huge sacrifice was only a small part of my wealth. Their greatest mistake had been believing I was an old woman who needed them, when in reality, they needed me. 30 days later, they returned the apartment keys and the car. Their comfortable lifestyle disappeared almost overnight, while I finally found peace. I sold the apartment, invested my money wisely, learned new skills, traveled, and fulfilled dreams I had postponed for decades. I even started building an animal rescue center, something my late husband and I had always wanted to create. My life no longer revolved around people who only valued my bank account. A few months later, my granddaughter Sophie came to my door in tears. Her marriage had already fallen apart, because her husband had only loved the wealthy lifestyle he believed came with being my granddaughter. She admitted she had watched her parents humiliate me at the wedding and had stayed silent because she was afraid. This time, I chose forgiveness, but not dependence. I welcomed her into my home, encouraged her to build her own career, and helped her become financially independent instead of simply giving her money. Looking back, I no longer remember that wedding with shame. I remember it as the day my old life ended and my real life finally began. Losing the respect of people who only loved my money turned out to be the greatest gift I could have received. I discovered that dignity is worth more than wealth, and self-respect is something no one can take away unless you willingly surrender it. The moment they locked me out of that wedding was the very moment I unlocked the door to a stronger, happier version of myself.